नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भक्ति स्वामी नामे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौर शेष जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत साई गौर हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे राम।
थोड़ी धीरे आवाज आ रही है माता जी। मतलब नॉट लाउड एंड क्लियर, थोड़ी धीरे आ रही है आवाज। आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ अदर्स आर आल्सो फेसिंग दिस प्रॉब्लम। रॉनी प्रभु, कैन यू प्लीज कंफर्म?
Yeah,
Are
we
you
are
able to hear it properly?
no, we cannot hear.
आवाज तो बिल्कुल नहीं आ रही।
Mataji, we cannot hear you. Can you try without her? Can you try without harmonium?
Krishna, can you hear us?
Mataji, we are not able to hear the kirtan. Can you try without the harmonium?
Now you can hear.
Yes, now we can hear.
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jagannatha Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna and Pranam dear devotees. So welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam reading session. So let me share my screen. We can share the quiz results. Okay. So on number 1 position, we have Atul Prabhu with 4,800 points. Anupama Mataji in the second position, 4,600 points. Anupama Mataji, I don't know how did she give the exam. Mataji to Kirtan kar rahe the. Saurabh Prabhu, 4,520 points. Anand Vilasini Mataji, one wrong question, 3,750 points. Amanitay Prabhu, 3,400 points. Good to see Amanitay Prabhu in the quiz. Anshi Mataji, 3,300 points. They all एक question गलत हो गया आप सबका. Hina Mataji, 3,200 points. Jeet Mataji, 2,900 points. Ayush Prabhu, 2 correct questions. Sham Prabhu is still giving the test. Vijay Mataji hasn't attempted the quiz yet. Let me refresh again and see if there are any changes. We are getting good responses from in the quiz now. Devotees are regular. Okay, so it is almost the same. Saurabh Prabhu, I think he was still there. Yeah, so it is the same. Okay, so let us begin our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So we are reading from chapter number 4, and fourth chapter is the appearance of Shri Narad Muni, you know, and जो शौनक मुनि है, शौनक Rishi, so he asks Asud Goswami about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, of history of Parikshit Maharaj, and how did he renounced, why did he renounce everything, why did he went to Sukdev Goswami to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and what led to the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And तो अभी हम वो पढ़ रहे हैं, और अभी हमने we have read till 6th shloka, and जिसका आपने quiz भी दिया. So now we read further. If any devotee who wants to read, they can please raise their hand. So now we are in the same process of Shaunak Rishi asking Sud Goswami about the King Parikshit and further. So we जो अगले 6-7 श्लोक हैं वो इसी के ऊपर है. कथम वा पांडवे यस्य राजर्षिर्मुनीन सहा संवाद समाभूतता तात यत्रेषा सात्वती श्रुति. Synonyms, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Katham, how is it? Va, also. Pandave yasya, of the descendants of Pandu, Parikshit, Rajarshe, of the kings who was a sage, Munina, with the Muni, Saha, with Samvadaha, discussion, Samabhut, took place, Tat, O darling, Yatra, whereupon Esh, like this, Sat Satvati, transcendental, Shruti, essence of the Vedas. Translation. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Shuk Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Sukdev Goswami, the great liberated sage. Read further. Sagodahana matram hi griheshu grihamedhinam avekshate mahabhagas tirthi kurvam stad ashramam saha. He, Sukdev Goswami, Godhan matram, only for the time of milking the cows. He, certainly, Griheshu, in the household, Griha Medhinam, of the householders, Avekshate, waits, Mahabhaga, the most fortunate, Tirthi, pilgrimage, Kurvan, transforming, Tat Ashramam, there is residence. He, Sukdev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did just to sanctify the residence. Sukdev Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence of his auspicious presence. Therefore, Sukdev Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with the householders, save and except to enlighten them in the transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householders should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly men. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. So the learning for here, for us also, is that whenever somebody who is either a sadhu or a sannyasi who comes to our home, we should always see that he has come for our purification or for our benefit, not something that he wants or that they want. So the only purpose of their visiting our householders, because we are grihasthas or our households, is only for जैसे यहाँ पे बताया गया है, only for the for preaching purposes and for enlightenment of the householders, so and for no other purpose, and they come to sanctify the residence. So like that we can understand. Yes, Radhika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Abhimanyu sutam suta prahur bhagavatouttamam tasya janmam mahaashram karmani cha grihani na. Translation. Synonyms. Abhimanyu sutam, the son of Abhimanyu. Suta, O Sut. Prahu is said to be Bhagavata Uttamam, the first class devotee of the Lord. Tasya, his. Janma, birth. Maha Ashcharyam, very wonderful. Karmani, activities. Cha, and. Grihinihi, please speak. To. Naha, us. Translation. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is the great first-class devotee of the Lord and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. Purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother, he was protected by the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being. And thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the days he heard Bhagavatam, he did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. The desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail.
Yes. So Maharaj Parikshit, आगे जाके हम पढ़ेंगे कैसे that he got the curse from the boy of a Brahman, and then how he's cursed that the Takshak Nag will come to and will be the cause of his death, and he only had 7 days to live. So he got the show cause notice for his death, but we don't have any kind of show cause notice like that. And so in that sense, we can say that we should utilize each and every moment of our life in uplifting ourselves spiritually and becoming dear to the Lord and devoting ourselves for the devotional service of the Lord. Although that does not mean that I am doing it. So, but he had um, he knew the time that when he is going to pass and is going to die, and for then he, after that moment, he spent every single moment, and he did not sleep nor did he take anything, and he simply heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami, and for that he is the first class devotee of the Lord. Yes, Mataji, continue. Okay. So
Shall I continue, Prabhuji?
yes.
Sa samrat kasya vahito Panduna manavardhanaha Praya upavasita gangayam Andatriya adhirat sriyam. Synonyms: Sa, he, Samrat, the emperor, Kasya, forward, Va, or, Hito, reason, Pandu Nam, the sons of Pandu, Mana Vardhanaha, one who enriches the family, Praya Upavasitaha, sitting and fasting, Ganga Yam, on the banks of Ganges, and Anadritya, neglecting, Adhirat, acquired kingdom, Shriyam, opulences. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of Ganges and fast until death? Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaj Yudhishthir, and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all we eager to know the cause.
Okay, Anupama Mataji, should I read the Sanskrit?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. No, I can try.
Okay.
Namanti yat padaniketam atmanam shivyahantya dhanani shatrava gatsavir shriyam anga dusyajam yuveshato drishtutam aho sahasubhi. Synonyms: Namanti, bow down, yat pada, whose feet, niketam, under, atmana, own, shivya, welfare, hanya, used to bring about, dhanani, wealth, satrava, enemies, katham, for what reason, sa, he, viraha, the shavaless, shriyam, opulences, ang, O Sutta Goswami, Dushyagam, insuperable, Yuva, in full youth, Asata, desired, Utrashtam, to give up, Aho, exclamation, Saha, with, Subhiha, life. Translation. He was just a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Purpose. There was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man and could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies, and therefore the kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains, and matters, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So, materially, everything was satisfactory. Therefore, there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom and life. The sages were eager to hear about all this.
Continue.
Continue. शिवाय लोकस्य भाव्य भूताय या उत्तम श्लोक प्रयाणः जन जीवन्ति नात्माधर्मसो पराश्रय मुमोच निर्विद्या कुतः कलेवरम शिवाय welfare lokasya of all living beings bhavai for flourishing bhute for economic development ye one who is uttam shloka prayanaha devoted to the causes of the personality of godhead jana man jivanti do live na but not atma artham selfish interest asuha that para para asryaham shelter for others mumocha give up nirvidya being freed from all attachment kutaha for what reason kalevaram mortal body translation those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So, even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachments to the worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter for others? Purport. Parikshit Maharaj was an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of personality of Godhead. A devotee of Lord automatically has all good qualifications, and the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was king for the all around welfare of his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for his life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow others to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness men, animal, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self centered or self extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead. The king is a representative of Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of Godhead. Hence, The activities of the citizens should be coordinated that they can at the end go back home, back to Godhead. Under the administration of the representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruits, and vegetables, so that human beings as well as the animals can eat uh,
Sumptuously.
sumptuously and to their heart content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbances between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign.
Yes. Thank you, Mother. तत्सर्वं न समाचक्ष्वा पृष्टो यदिह किञ्चन मन्ये त्वं विषये वाचं स्नातम् अन्यत्र छन्दसात्. Ayush Prabhu, you want to read?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. That sarvam all na unto us samakakshva clearly explain prastaha question yat iha herein kinkana all that mane we think tvam you visaye in all subjects vakam meaning of words snatam fully acquainted Anyatra, except Chandasat, portion of the Vedas. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purpose. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmas and the Parivarjakas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivarjakaras or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivarjakaras are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet it should be not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandina Smriti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Raj, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with prana omkara, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Sukdev Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam. Although he is already self-realized, Srila Sutta Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than the parrot-like chanting.
So that is the essence of the message, that it is not that either of them is low or any of them is high, but realization is more important than simply knowing it. और अभी एक वीडियो भी डाली थी फिजुलनेस कदमकांड स्वामी महाराज की कुछ दिन पहले. Maharaj very expertly explained the difference between knowing something versus realization. So Maharaj explained with the help of an example where he said that he was talking on Bhagavad Gita, and he said that so Bhagavad Gita, we can compare Bhagavad Gita to be an example of a cookbook. And let's say we have a very good cookbook, very nice cookbook. It has very nice recipes. And you hear that cookbook from somebody, and he has explained every single thing in detail very nicely. Add a pinch of salt to this, add a pinch of chili to this, and do this and do that. And you create a very nice dish. You can create a very nice dish. And you can keep on going on and on and on and on. And you can cram that whole cookbook. But what is the use that if you didn't create one dish out of that? Simply having the understanding or simply having the knowledge from that cookbook is not just enough. But the beautiful part is that even if we can simply create one single recipe out of that, that will be more than what we have just heard. The whole thing we can, that single thing would be much more than what we can imagine understanding about that thing. So in that sense, he explained that how realization is much more important than simply having gyan or knowledge. So one is Vigyan and one is Gyan. Vigyan is realization and Gyan is knowledge. And also when we try to speak to others, if we don't have the realization, we would be sharing the information. But if we have that, so then that will carry that impact to others. If we have ourselves have not realized it, then we may be passing on information like that. Vrindavan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Sut uvacha dvapre samanu prapte vritte yug paryaye jata prasharadyogi vasavayam kalya hare. Sut Goswami Uvach said, Dwapare in the second millennium, Samanu Prapte on the advent of Trite, third Yuga millennium, Paryaye in the place of Jata was begotten, Parasarat by Parasar, Yogi the great sage, Vasvyam in the womb of the daughter of Vasu, Kalya in the plenary portion, Hare of the personality of Godhead. Translation. Sut Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parasar in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali. But sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vavasvat Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the four millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, Lord Shri Krishna also descends, and because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu, fisherman, and the father was the great Parashar Muni. That is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age. Right.
Continue.
Sa kadachit sarasvatya ups krishya jalam shuchi vivikta ek asi na udite ravi mandale. Synonym. Saha, he, kadachit, once, Sarasvatya, on the bank of the Saraswati. Upasprishya, after finishing morning ablutions. Jalam, water. Suchi, being purified. Vivikte, concentration. Eka, alone. Asina, being thus seated. Udite, on the rise. Ravi Mandale, of the sun disk. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Purport. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrika Ashram area of the Himalayas. So the place indicator here is Samya Pras in the Badrika Ashram, where Shri Vyasadeva is residing.
Hare Krishna. So we are already at 8:15. So now this phase is starting where Srila Vyasadeva will start noticing the deterioration of Kali Yuga, and he divides the Vedas into four. We will understand it further in the upcoming shlokas. And then he compiled Mahabharata, but he is not satisfied. And then he further has his queries to his spiritual master, Narad Muni. And then the Narad Muni appears. So this will put rest to this session. And if there are any questions or any comments, then we can take.
जो सेकंड लास्ट श्लोका पढ़ा जिसमें युग ओवरलैप कर रहे हैं,
Yes.
तो जो युगों का जो है मतलब ड्यूरेशन नहीं, ऑर्डर, पहले सतयुग है, फिर त्रेता है, फिर द्वापर एंड देन कली.
Correct.
तो कई बार एक बार ऐसे भी होता है ना कि द्वापर पहले आता है, त्रेता बाद में आता है.
नहीं, ये वाला वो है जहाँ पे त्रेता पहले आया. त्रेता मतलब थर्ड एंड द्वापर मतलब दूसरा. बट इन दिस चतुर्युग, in Dwapar is coming second. There is an alteration, and also in this Chaturyuga only Lord Krishna appears as himself. In others he does not appear as himself, but in this he himself comes as not the avatar comes, but the avatari comes. And in this Chaturyuga only, that the right order is Satyug, Dwapar, Treta, Kaliyug. In other yugas, in other Chaturyugas, but in this Chaturyuga, it is Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, and Kaliyug. So Treta is coming first, and Dwapar is coming due to alteration. So that is what has been explained over there.
तो वही ओवरलैपिंग है, उसी का ही
तो लिखा ना 28th round of 4 millenniums. So कितने होते हैं? 71 चतुर्युग होते हैं. एक उसमें एक मनु के 14 मनु होते हैं और 71 चतुर्युग होते हैं, इसलिए 1000 सहस्त्र युग होते हैं ब्रह्मा जी के एक दिन में. तो जो वैवस्वत मनु है उसके 28th चतुर्युग में ये होता है, मतलब ये हुआ जो कि अभी चल रहा है. That is the 28th चतुर्युगा, and in that there is a overlap of Dwapar and Treta. So Treta comes first and Dwapar comes third. Treta comes second and Dwapar comes third.
ओवरलैप भी काफी बड़ा है पूरे युग का.
So Prabhuji, in this yuga means like in our yuga, Satyug, then Treta, and then Dwapar, and then Kali Yuga. It has happened like this now. Correct. So this is the same yuga that we are living, right? We are talking about this. We are talking about the same.
This is the same cycle of Chaturyuga. I mean, we are in Kali Yuga right now.
Yeah. Yes.
और उसमें वो भी बताया कि कैसे there are 3 sandhyas. So between Satyuga and Treta, between Treta and Dwapar, and between Dwapar and Kali. So 3 sandhya. So then we have the transition period.
So ये जो भागवतम चल रही है, ये ट्रांजिशन पीरियड के बाद चल रही है ना, नैमिषारण्य में
पीरियड में चल रही है.
उसी पीरियड में चल रही है.
Correct. Because the Lord has gone back, and there is now the transition. So we will end the session. Okay, are there any more question or anything?
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I wanted to know, what does overlap mean? I mean, overlap to tab hota na when 2 yugas are, they are simultaneously together. But abhi to aisa kuch hai nahi. 1 yuga has ended, second has come, third has come, fourth has come. So what is overlap? In this sense, agar 2 युग एक साथ होते हैं तो overlap होता है. तो यहाँ हम कौन से overlap की बात कर रहे हैं?
The alteration is in that sense only, because मेको भी इतना ही पता है, that's where the Treta Yuga comes second, and that is being called as an overlap, and due to this alteration, so that thing is happening.
Okay, so they're calling this change as an overlap.
Yes, like this मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ उसमें. During the regime of Vivasvat Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums. And the 3rd millennium appeared prior to the 2nd.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, right. और उसमें translation में भी यही है that Sut Goswami said when the 2nd millennium overlapped the 3rd. So in that sense they are saying कि overlap करने का मतलब वो बाद में आ रहा है और ये पहले आ रहा है. So जो alteration है that they're calling it as overlap.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you.
Sujit Madhuri has a question. What is Sandhya? So Sandhya is the transition period between the one yuga and other yuga. So for example, when Dwapar yuga is ending and Kali yuga is starting, so it is not that all of a sudden it happens. So there is a Sandhya period where neither of it has started, neither of it has ended. Like for example, the Sandhya जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना, संध्या हो गई. संध्या मतलब जब सूर्यास्त हो जाता है. तो जब सूर्यास्त हो जाता है तो ना पूरी रात होती है ना पूरा दिन होता है.
दिन होता है, correct.
उसको संध्या बोलते हैं. लाइक विच इज द कॉमन और द क्या बोलते हैं कॉमन पीरियड जिसको हम बोलते हैं ना, वो सेट में वो जो ओवरलैपिंग पीरियड होते थे.
जी प्रभु जी. थैंक यू प्रभु जी. थैंक यू.
हरे कृष्ण.
हरे कृष्ण. हरे कृष्ण.
Okay, so we will end the session over here. नमो ओम विष्णु पदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात देशधारिणे. And one more thing I wanted to say before you all leave. So I had there were 2 questions in our last session. One question was about monism, that where Sukadev Goswami was considered as being a monist or concentrating as the mind on monism. So I had asked Prabhuji, Giraj Prabhu, so he confirmed the same thing which we had understanding at that day also, that it has been considered as that he is being considered as an impersonalist, and monism means that monism actually means that everything is one. So the theory of monism means everything is one and there is no different, no two things are there, right? And his mind concentrating on monism means that only that he is being concentrating on oneness. So oneness of everything in oneness. So that thing only has been explained over there. और जो हमने उस दिन explain किया था और जो पढ़ा था वो वही था, वो अभी भी वही है. So that stays intact. And the other question was that I think Saurabh Prabhu had a question that कि सुखदेव गोस्वामी जी ने कब सुनी श्रीमद् भागवतम. तो अभी हम आगे जाके उसको पढ़ेंगे that he will hear from Srila Vyasdev only. He did not hear in the womb. He will hear from Srila Vyasdev and we will read that in the upcoming chapters. So these were the 2 questions where we had the doubts, and so that I had asked. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you
For attending the sessions on everyday basis, and I'm really very thankful to all of you. So we'll end the session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.